Yeah, it also reminds me of something that Samaria Williams, one of my past guests at Cardinal Health, and so she was really, talking about the digital environment that we live in, and she said something which is so simple yet profound. And she says, when I have like 20 people on a Zoom call, for instance, right, and I see somebody actually unmuting themselves and then muting themselves back, she
Mm.
makes it a point at the end of it to go and reach out to them either on the call or after the call, saying you had something to say, but obviously the speaker would not give you let you in edgeways, and therefore you went back on mute. What was on your mind, right? And so for me, I mean, that I want to work for Samara, right? Just for that reason alone, because she makes me feel included. But what, again, in any tips, suggestions you have in this digital universe we're in to get people to have that sense of inclusion, so that we, like to your point, I mean, we have these diverse thoughts that are not just sitting in people's heads, but they actually come out.
Well, I mean, I'll go back to my point about people like me shutting up and listening. I think good leaders ask more questions than tell. You don't drive people to a solution. Leading means you help guide them there. And if I already have a solution in mind, I'm doing myself a disservice and I'm doing my team a disservice. If I reveal that, and tip my hand too early, I want to know what the team thinks. I want to know if I'm wrong, if I'm totally out of base on whatever the issue is. So I think recognizing that not everybody is going to be comfortable contributing in the same sort of way, in the same sort of channels, learning and developing those relationships with your team members so that you know what the best way is to approach them and where they're going to feel most comfortable contributing. And then we talk about celebrating a lot. Some people aren't comfortable with that either, right? So you don't want to penalize someone who, even with the best intentions, who contributed something incredibly meaningful to the group. Maybe recognizing them is actually going to do more harm than good. So again, this is about the personal connections that you make with your team and understanding how they best fit into the overall organization.
One of the rules that we've had, at least here at H&R Block, when I was over there and building the SOC, for example, is that we may have technical differences when it comes to our position, right? But when it comes to ideas, we're all the same. And the expectation, it wasn't a please, it wasn't a maybe, it was every single person on the team is expected, from the freshers, the interns in our global team, to our interns in the US, all the way up to the seniors. They're expected to provide feedback. So if they see something that can be done different or better, or they have a different idea, the expectation from the cultural perspective is that they speak up. Now, we may not always go for that, but the funny part is, looking back, more often than not, if the idea was halfway decent, we at least tried it. That's the whole point of having a culture where you can fail fast. Let's give it a shot. If it doesn't work, we'll move to something different. But we really want to encourage all of those ideas to reach, the light of day.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way you can encourage that long term is through follow through. So if you say it and they provide ideas and we don't do anything about it, well, we've kind of failed as leaders, right? But if the teams bring up ideas on how to get better or how to do things different, and we at least try it, well, now we've put actions in instead of words. And I think actions ultimately provide far more value from a cultural perspective than words ever will.
So one final question, again, you mentioned the word interns and new hires. So in this digital universe, when you haven't had the luxury of meeting them in person and building those bonds and connections, looking at facial cues, how have you seen this? How do you end up kind of building those relationships over Zoom and other virtual chat rooms, right?
Yeah, it's definitely more challenging than when we were able, to meet and interact in person. I think it takes more effort, and we've been really preaching to our people leaders the importance of, you can't just swing by someone's desk anymore or cubicle. You need to reach out, whether it's on Zoom, whether it's email, whether it's a quick chat. Those little contacts are incredibly important, even more so now when we're isolated from each other. And I think patience is a big bit. It's tough, especially in the kind of environment we have now. But we've talked before on Ashwin about diversity of thought, diversity of backgrounds. People that are neurodiverse oftentimes swinging by a desk is the wrong way to interact, right? Face to face is not the best way. And so, sometimes that means an email that they can read and digest and then meet with you and talk about later is a better approach. So again, it's really, this is not easy stuff. The people stuff is always the hardest part. And we need people leaders that are invested in spending that extra time, making that extra effort to connect with their teams.
I mean, that's really why I like these kinds of efforts, Ashwin, is, this entire community, cybersecurity especially, is built on this concept of people, process, and technology in that order, right? And yet, if you go to any conference out there, what's the focus? If you go to any technical publication, what's the focus, right? It's not on the people. It's generally on tech, sometimes on process, but almost never on people. And yet, if you go into the Twitterverse for InfoSec or LinkedIn InfoSec, what's the number one topic you hear people complaining about and struggling with?
Yeah.
It's people, right? So as leaders, we have to do a lot better job of connecting with our folks, of knowing who they are on their individual basis. And Zoom is hard, remote is hard. And while I appreciate those and totally empathize with those who love a 100% full remote environment, I'm personally not in the crowd that will ever say that what we're doing right now, will ever replace doing the same thing over a beer or over a coffee or over lunch, right?
Yeah.
There's some things that's still missing when it comes to the total picture. And so when I can, for example, like when we had our interns come through Block, for those that were available, we set up, hey, let's go have lunch occasionally. And it's not as often as it used to be, but even the occasional contact where possible makes a huge difference.
Well said. Yeah. Again, I think, these are obviously strange times, right? And we have to adapt to it, but you're right. I think we got to overcompensate for those physical face-to-face interactions that can never be replaced. So,
Absolutely.
Great conversation again, Joshua. Thanks for your time. Carraig, thanks for your time.
My pleasure.
Sure, no problem, anytime.